like to call to order the April 6th, 2023 Plan Commission meeting. Could I get a roll call, please?
Yes. Brink.
Here.
Douglas Johnson.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
Colhane.
Here.
Oletsky.
Present.
Kays.
Here.
And Dolly, Hanson, and Spire are absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item 3, is an invitation for public comment participant submittal. If there's anything not on the agenda that you wish to talk about, if anyone from the audience wishes to talk about, please just let Brandy know and there will be time at the end of the meeting. Item 4 on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 5th item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the March 23rd meeting. Can I get a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 6 is our regular agenda. 6A is commission consideration of resolution 2023-10, plat and outlot A of the Williston edition. Brandy, will you take over, please?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So this is the plat of Lot 1, Block 1, and Detention Outlet A, Block 2 of Williston 2nd Edition. This property was previously platted as Williston Annexation 1st Edition. And if you recall as well, in November of 2022, the concept plan for this subdivision on the west side of Lake Kempesca and north of Highway 212 was brought forward and approved by Plan Commission for the proposed subdivision here. And so then this plat is in line with the proposed concept plan. And then the area was annexed and zoned in December of 2022. That's when it was platted. So it was brought in as R1 single family residential. And then it was rezoned to meet the concept plan, the approved concept plan to be the C3 highway commercial district. That Lot 1 on the plat is shown as. Here on the agenda packet, we have the approved preliminary plan, and that gets into the more technical details of how these lots will be serviced by utilities. And so you can see here, Lot 1 is already rezoned to C3 highway commercial. And then the Detention Outlet A is platted, and it's still R1. And because it is abutting future infrastructure of 8th Avenue, that extension shown here. So we also have a development agreement attached with this plat. And you'll notice it's written a little differently, not as typical, because the unique thing with this plat is that each of the 2 lots being platted have access to 78th Street Southwest. However, the concept plan showed that 8th Avenue or South Lake Drive would be extended to the west. And then also 80th Street Northwest going there to the north. So the plat needs to follow what the concept plan shows, but the infrastructure would be, in essence, a street to nowhere at this point. So we wrote in the development agreement that the owners would be signing a waiver of right to protest for future installation of that street upon development to further to the west or north, so that we can still achieve orderly development. But in the circumstance that development does not happen to the north or west, these lots still achieve access, and then it's just less public infrastructure maintenance, I guess, for X amount of years until it would develop. So we do have them reserving a 66-foot access easement so that there's no construction, and just to make any future buyer aware that this obligation would be outstanding. This is also typical of how we have dealt with other scenarios like this, and for close proximity, this is how we dealt with Scott Munger's Midwest Business Condos. Their 5th Avenue Northwest will be extended to the west at the time development happens to the west. So with all of that information, I will stand by for any questions.
Thank you, Brandy. Yes, I'll start. I have a question. So normally when the roads go in, they get built by the developer developing the whole area. So if and when development happens farther west of here, it'll be these landowners that have to pitch in their share of the road for this stretch of South Lake Drive.
Correct. Because, typically it's either the developer who is platting the lots is installing the infrastructure, but they are still able to recover that cost from the sale of the lots. So since this will not be installed within the 2-year typical time frame, the future owner of Lot 1 or the Detention Outlet A, which I don't foresee being conveyed, would be responsible, and they would be aware of that.
Would Detention Outlet A become part of the city? Is that like a drainage pond that?
So it will not, because it's not residential development surrounding. It's a regional detention facility there's CL and R3 proposed in the concept plan and the preliminary plan. The only time the city takes over detention ponds is when it's a residential development. And there's no homeowner association or commercial business, things of that nature, because it's obviously perpetual maintenance.
So the developer will probably not sell Detention Outlet A because there's really no market for that. Mm-hmm. So the developer is going to be on the hook for half a street at some point in time. And what is the triggering point for development to the west that's going to require that street to be constructed?
So anytime that they want to do additional platting, then that's when it will have to all be wrapped up into the same project.
Okay, thank you.
Brandy, how exactly does Detention Outlet A Block 2 have access to 78th Street?
Right here, they do have frontage along 78th.
But there's a water feature that goes right across there, so they'll be filling that in, or they'll drive across the water, or how will they have access, actually?
They would they would apply for a permit through engineering, and then they would size a culvert appropriately so that water could still drain. And if there is wetlands, all of those things would have to be looked at to make sure that they were not filling in a jurisdictional wetland.
So essentially, for the purpose of this action, that lot really doesn't have access to 78th Street because those things have not yet been done?
It does, because it has frontage.
Frontage, but you can't get to the frontage.
And that is so the environmental constraints versus the subdivision ordinance, it is meeting ordinance, so they are able to in some way achieve access by having that frontage.
I guess I'm confused. I thought that was park. Is that what you're calling detention? Where's the park for this whole development then?
Further to the north. So I'll show you here.
I thought on your colored map online
So the
it showed.
park will be over here. And this is, let me just rotate this so we have it facing the right way. So, oops, now I
So the
went too
park will
far.
be north of Munger's?
Yes. And that's so this is the lot that we're looking at here. The park is up here, where all those trees
Okay.
are.
So now I have another question. How come we have R1 there instead of R3 if the other lots right next to it are R3? Even in the master plat, why did we say R1 there?
So we started out when we annexed and zoned it because you have to have, we brought in 35 acres we brought in 34 acres, and to plat it as anything else, or to plat it as ag, as we typically do for a placeholder district, you have to have 35 acres. So it's more of a placeholder district, and then we will rezone as development occurs.
Okay, so 78th Street then is going to get widened at this time to the extent of the commercial lot by the developer?
No.
Why not?
So that would end up being most likely an assessment project, and Heath can expand on that if he would like at all.
Yes, sorry, Commissioner, could you repeat that question?
Well, we're, going to be right back to where we were before. I don't think I need to mention any areas. Why are we bringing in a commercial lot without that street having been widened and, to be able to handle whatever goes in that corner? We're going to use the Lake Drive for access. I don't see anything coming off of 212. So we're going to bring a lot of commercial traffic onto that narrow road.
You're referring to Old Highway 139?
Right. 78th Street, whatever you're calling it, yeah.
Sure.
27 feet.
I don't believe that any traffic generated from this plat is going to trigger any widening of that street section. Is that your concern?
Yeah, so never ever?
If you mean from this one plat, never ever, I'm saying yes. A commercial lot of this size, I don't believe will generate traffic to impact. If they came in with a development like a Flying J truck stop for this lot, we would look at that differently if that's what they wanted to permit. But that would come at that time of development of the lot where we would request a traffic impact assessment. But for the means of a plat, to perform the function of platting this lot, nothing has triggered at this point a traffic impact study. And the amount of traffic generated is likely not going to impact Old Highway 139 to the point of needing to widen it or reconstruct it.
But someday, when that whole development goes in, that's when that would get triggered?
Potentially. I haven't done an assessment of the street width out there as of late, but again, also as we've talked about at length with other applications, a two-lane highway has quite a bit of traffic volume capacity, up to 10,000 vehicles a day. And to my knowledge, I believe this has two adequate full-width lanes that are of at least 11 feet, would be my guess, which again can convey quite a bit of traffic. So,
And this commercial can't get access off at 212 at all?
I don't know if they've explored that with the highway department, but my guess is it'd be preferred to feed off of 139, 78th Street.
I will jump in with my DOT hat on and say no, they wouldn't get access off of the highway.
And that was something too, when we reviewed with the DOT during the concept plan, that's why 8th Avenue ran on the north side of those lots, because they wouldn't be allowed access.
Okay. So Rhonda's just going to be on this. Once the rest of it comes in, and I'm jumping ahead, could be years, could be never. When the R3 comes in, are we going to widen that street then?
But, I mean, for the plat
and I know
today,
it's not pertinent today. I mean, if you're going to say that commercial spot doesn't need to have a wider area there, okay. I'm not an engineer. I'm just going by what we just all went through here. Are we going to need to widen that when the density increases? I mean, at what point do we, I see it happen to the old tree farm. The person that bought that lot had no idea that they were going to get that road assessment onto them. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a shady deal. And, blame us realtors. I'll put my realtor hat on and say, okay, I should be disclosing that. I should know that. So that when my buyer buys something like that, they aren't all of a sudden stuck with a huge infrastructure bill that they had no idea was coming at them.
Well,
so I guess, so for my frustration from that point is I'm selling that, or it's for sale.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that needed to be extended, widened, and it gets lost. And
So-
then pretty soon we've got narrow streets again.
To prevent that from happening, Commissioner, very good point. We do not want that to happen, and we are not allowing that to happen by means of how we process those assessments. We, in the City Engineering Office and Community Development, are requiring any assessments be filed with the property. Second Street, sometime back, 10, 15, I don't know how many years ago, 10 years ago, for whatever reason, that was held aside as a cost recovery and was not formally filed as an assessment at the time against those properties that were in the county. We do that now. We did not 10 years ago, but we do today. And so that is how we will prevent that from happening. So in the title search, these assessments are formally recorded to that property that's, whether it's annexed or not, it'll be on that property's record in the title search. And that, I can't speak for how things were done, but that's how we're doing things today.
Heath, but 78th Street, at some point in time, if it ever was to be widened, would not be a responsibility to those landowners because that would be an overage that the city would take on itself if we had to add an extra lane or a turn lane. I mean, because it's an established constructed 2-lane road which meets minimum design standards at the time. I mean, that's, if we have to widen from 212 north to South Lake Drive, that's more or less going to be a city-driven project, cost to be paid by the city.
Yes, unless there were evidence up front in the development, these phases here that we're working through now, that would indicate that the developer is triggering the need for that widening.
Right. At this point in time, though, we haven't taken a comprehensive look at the full build-out, whether or not that's going to require this development to be the trigger point, or it would be something further to the north that would add on to that.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I was just double-checking.
And if I could make one more point of clarity, Mr. Chairman, some of the recent discussions have had more to do with half-street sections. A rural street section that's an adequate 2 full lane widths, again, can convey a lot of traffic, upwards of 10,000 vehicles per day. And so I wouldn't lump this discussion of 78th in with the recent discussions we've been having related to half-street sections, because in my mind, from an engineering standpoint, they're two different things. I just want to make that point of clarity.
Yes, thank you. Is there any other comments from any board members? Plats do not have a public hearing with them, so
I move to approve the motion, or the resolution, please.
do we have a motion?
Second.
A motion and a second? Any further discussion? Seeing none. We'll, let's do a roll call vote.
All right. Case? Oletzky?
Yes.
Colhane?
Aye.
Brink?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Dargis Johnson?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Moving on the agenda, item 6B is commission consideration of resolution 2023-09, a zoning amendment to lot 19 of the Railroad Edition. Brandy, would you take over, please?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So this is a rezone request by Jimmy Wen, and he is the acting agent for PJ&I LLC, and is petitioning to rezone from C2, which is local commercial, to R3 multifamily residential. And let me just get down there on the agenda here. So the property currently has storage units. So right here is this property, 2 lots. It does meet the minimum size requirement for R3 multifamily residential. You'll see that it currently has storage units located on this property. Now, in the C2 district, they had to receive a conditional use for the storage units. They would have to, again, if the storage units were to remain as R3, but it also allows some options for utilizing the multifamily residential, which is in great proximity to LATC. And so, but if the storage units were to stay following the rezone action at council, then the Board of Adjustment would see the conditional use come forward for the storage units to remain as well. So with that, I will stand by for questions.
If I could add to that, Mr. Chairman. This is one of those unique situations where we're performing a rezone with existing infrastructure, existing facilities on it. And so we always want to be sensitive to ensure that we're not creating nonconformities by the function of our rezone. And that's exactly what Brandy just walked through is if we rezone this to an R3, yes, we're going to be creating nonconformities by the use of storage units in an R3 zoning district. So to address that, we believe the owner's intent is to redevelop the land into more of an R3 function, but they may also want to include some of these existing storage units my point is that continued use will take an additional action at a later time from the Board of Adjustment for a conditional use for those storage units in our R3 district.
Which you guys will also recall that we've been doing that recently as our practice then, to make sure that the property is zoned before asking for a conditional use, so that it's an appropriate ask.
Real quick, Chair. Any building permit or just a building permit on the non-conforming structures?
Any building permit, wouldn't it be?
Yes, any building permit, because,
We'll trigger a CUP.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because right now the lot, if it would be rezoned, it would technically be legal non-conforming. So if they want to change anything, yes.
Even when he wants to build the apartments or something, he would have to get,
If it was rezoned to R3, then apartments would be a permitted use. So if he wanted to take all of the storage units out and just do apartments, that would be fine.
But if he was to remove half the storage units, get the permit to build the apartment, and then use those storage units as accessory to the apartments, that would be a permissible use.
It would, but
As long as
they
I'm
would
not,
have to
as long as I'm
be,
not renting them out to somebody else.
if they were accessory, that's where my mind was going to. If they were accessory to the apartments, it would have to be residentially sided. So the metal would have to go away.
Or else we would have to do the conditional use.
Yep.
Okay.
But if it goes to R3, they have to come for their conditional use.
Not if they tore down all the buildings and built an apartment.
No, but if they leave the
Well,
storage there,
they would only need the CUP if they needed a building permit. I mean,
Right,
they could
okay.
stay there and they could be transferred to somebody else, and that would go forward.
So my only question on that then, Brandy, is that's pretty much a wide open entrance there, that 190 feet. Do we get any curbing done on that, just to control traffic coming out with, even before with this, is there a control on that?
Yes, with the building permit, we would make sure that they were doing a controlled access point that was not exceeding our engineering design standards.
But if he doesn't come, if he decides to not do anything, then it just stays the way it is.
Yep.
Thank you. I will open the public hearing. If there's anyone to speak in favor or against this item, please feel free to approach the mic and state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is James Eichinger. I'm adjacent on the map Hampton and McCool Edition R2A district on the south side. Could you show what you just meant by access right of way? I heard 160 feet or something now that the map is on the screen.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the 160 feet was. So they have about 210 foot of frontage, but they would be limited to having controlled access to a 36-foot curb cut. So right now they don't have any of the curb cuts. Well, they have some, but we would just, if they applied for a building permit and submitted a site plan, we would make sure that their access was controlled.
Okay, I understand. Actually, what I would like to propose here, the word on the street is, if you move that wand to the left, the word on the street is that those storage units are staying. If you move the wand to the left.
Okay. Proceed.
Nope.
That's okay. We don't have, these,
Just to the left of where the wand is. The rumor is, nope, down. Okay. Yep.
proceed.
Yeah. Okay. The rumor on the street is that those are staying. And so obviously what they're trying to do with this entire rezoning is they want to build apartments, but the word on the street is, if you go to the extreme northeast of the property where it looks like little railroad cars, can you move the wand, please, and point to that?
I think you might have a little delay.
Okay, can you move the wand to the extreme northeast of their property, please?
I think it's there.
Oh, boy. We have a delay. Yeah, thank you. Okay. The word is that they're going to move those, which are just shipping containers, and they will build apartments there. So, in my opinion, to make life easier on everybody, where it says Lot 19 Railroad Edition and Lot A Railroad Edition, that should remain at its existing C2 commercial, and their petition should be amended such that they're requesting R3 for where they want to put the apartment. And then you wouldn't need to mess with your conditional use for the storage unit. Am I making
So,
sense?
yeah,
I'm
no,
new to talking this lingo.
Yep, and thank you for that suggestion. However, you can't split zone a lot. So it has to be completely zoned, and then also there's minimum lot size requirements and lot width and access and frontage and all of that. So we do appreciate that suggestion, though.
Okay, the lot needs to be split then first and foremost.
But then it would not have access to a public right-of-way, so that would be up to the property owner to decide. What they're proposing is to rezone the entirety of it from C2 to R3, and that's what the board is considering today.
The question regarding those shipping container types, that can be regulated through the CUP process, whether or not we want to encourage that sort of a use on the property or deny that? Or do we get into the specifics of what personal storage is by the ordinance?
No. So if the portable shipping containers or anything is considered a structure and has to meet setbacks, which is what we talked about too when we annexed and zoned the
golf
others.
course.
Yeah. So it all has to just be managed at the time of the conditional use application and what they're planning on doing, because it is up to the property owner on what they do want to end up proposing. But I do believe the intention of going to the multifamily would be to have multifamily units.
Back to my question though, but theoretically, the way those things are laid out right now, and if they are considered a structure, and they need to be separation distance between structures and from the setbacks. Technically, the way that layout is right now probably does not comport with what the ordinance requires.
That is true, and this map is from 2020, so we'd have to go and investigate kind of how the site looks today.
I forget the exact terms, but if we look at the map, Exhibit A, it already is split. So I see a line, LP Edition on the north, and I see below that line, Lot 19 Railroad Edition, and then split again, Lot A Railroad Edition. So again, LP Edition could be rezoned to R3, and the other could stay the same.
It could, but that is not what the property owner is proposing at this time. But maybe it couldn't, because it might not meet the minimum lot requirements, actually, before I speak too soon.
Caller, can I ask you why you are concerned about it staying R2, RC2, instead of just all going to R3?
Yes. Currently, the storage units are my neighbors. And if you have to have a neighbor, a storage unit is the preferred neighbor in a multifamily apartment.
Okay. But more than likely, I'm guessing that those that are right along the south there too, you are probably going to stay if he gets his conditional use. So, I you know what I'm saying? So I think you're still going to have those to look at instead of a neighbor. I would assume. I'm not sure, but.
Right.
Brandy, are apartments a conditional use in the C2 zone?
Yes.
So in theory, even in the current zone, his neighbor could become an apartment.
Mm-hmm. But in Rhonda, I think that's a good assumption. The units to the south look like they are more permanent than the things going on to the north. So, and even if they're not used as storage units and if they're used for accessory structures, it might even improve. And this is all speculation because then they would have to create, they'd have to be residentially sided. So it could be still the buffer could be there and it could be an improvement. Yep. Aesthetically.
Thank you for all those comments. Is there any other comments on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion and a second from the board.
Move to approve the resolution.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further consideration? Hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Randy?
All right. Dargis Johnson.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
Colhane.
Yes.
Aletsky.
Yes.
Case.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item 6C on the agenda is commission consideration of resolution 2023-08, the concept plan of Calvin Industrial Park Second Edition. Randy, I'll
All right, thank you, Jeff. So this is a concept plan for Calvin Industrial Park Second Edition, and this is located along the South Bypass Route or 20th Avenue Southeast. If you recall, we do have we've looked at the Calvin Industrial First Edition, which is just to the west of the Terex project here, where Eastside Equipment and CLI are located. So now this second edition includes this piece of property that was annexed and zoned, I want to say around 2018, 2019, and it was brought in as I-1 Light Industrial District. And so now today we're looking at creating approving the concept plan that shows the roadmap for future development in this area, which I will pull up here so you guys have. So this is the area we're looking at. This is the Calvin Industrial First Edition. And then, so this it's proposed to stay I-1 Light Industrial. All of the lots that are proposed meet the minimum lot size requirement, which is 30,000 square feet, and these are greater than that. So you can see there's phase 1 and there's phase 2. So at this point, then 23rd will not be required or will not be being installed, but phase 1 will install Calvin Drive. And then you'll notice too, as far as sanitary sewer and any utility hookups, we will continue to work with Watertown Development Company on long-term lift station installation in this area, but currently then these will be lot 1 and lot 7 in these locations will be served by a private grinder pump and then a private line to the sanitary sewer. And then the other lots, if and when they are developed, they will utilize sealed holding tanks until we are able to get a plan in place for a long-term solution with a lift station, because this area requires that for development. So they will still, the 2 lots that will be most likely developed first will still be connected to sanitary sewer, though. But the long-term solution will be, it'll be a investment for future development of that entire area that we will continue to explore.
Mr. Chair,
With that, I'll stand by for any questions.
Mr. Chair, being that my firm is administrating federal dollars associated with this project, I feel it'd be necessary that I recuse myself from any decision making.
Thank you for that. Brandy, since this is done in phases, the first phase will kind of have a dead end street. Do we have, or does the city have any problems or concerns with that, with snow removal or garbage pickup or anything like that, because until that 23rd's connected in phase 2, it'll just dead end.
We will have a temporary turnaround on any dead end areas that'll meet the radiuses required for any garbage truck, any turnaround.
Fire apparatus.
Yeah.
Chair, and maybe you addressed this already, Brandy, is it anticipated that lot 1, 7, and 5 will dump onto 20th or the interior?
Interior.
Okay, maybe you already said that, and I apologize if I missed it.
Nope, I didn't. Good question.
And when phase 2 does happen, will that be a half street section, since looks like it's kind of right on the edge of the property line?
That'll be another one of those that we'll contemplate at that time when the plat happens. If the city ends up installing it and then assessing, but the thing is the city can't collect on an assessment until the property is annexed and zoned. So that's where we always run into these scenarios. Every community does with half streets. They're difficult, but we'll continue to work through, these past situations that we have seen and try to create a policy going forward as to how we want to handle that as a community.
Okay, my concern is that it looks like there's a drainage way. What, is that going to stay there?
Yeah, they will, and actually it's strategically built into the lot lines so that they can drain to the exteriors.
Chair? Brandy, I'm just wondering, when in phase 2, the service temporarily with holding tank, would each of those lots have their own holding tank? There wouldn't be a combined and what exactly, how would you define holding tank?
So the sealed holding tank does not, so you have to pump that because it includes all of the waste. So like a septic system, you would have the liquid would discharge. So a sealed holding tank is more, what's the word I'm going to look for? Environmental friendly.
So it's industrial, but it would be sealed.
Yes.
All right. And then, what would, looking into the future in your crystal ball, how much would have to be developed before there was actually a lift station and a sanitary sewer connection available for those holding tank lots?
Hopefully. Go ahead, Heath.
Ideally, we'd have that done right now, in my opinion, but we don't, and so we're working on that with WDC. The goal would be to go ahead and proceed with the funding mechanisms and carrying out the construction of a wet well and a lift station to service this whole, not only this industrial park, but some scope of area around it, because the other lands adjacent to this, to the south and to the east, are also in the same need of a lift station. So we're actively working on that right now, contemplating different funding mechanisms with WDC and the city, and trying to get that accomplished as soon as we can. I'd expand on the holding tank discussion too. That is an option in ordinance if the property exceeds, it's either 200 or 250 feet from a city sewer main. It's not an ideal situation to allow for those just because of the routine maintenance involved for that property owner or tenant to have to deal with. But it is an option afforded to landowners in our ordinances, and is ultimately a decision, I believe, is written in the ordinance by the city engineer. So we would make all the appropriate assessments to look at, what is the timing for a permanent lift station and sewer main service to be available. If that's soon to come, we'd probably put off the approval of a holding tank, as an example. If that's still a ways out, we need to get by with a holding tank and make ends meet and find a means to do so, then we'd interject that as an option. So I guess what I'm getting at is those things are circumstantial as those next few lots step into development phases. But I think, as Brandy mentioned, the initial lot or two, we have a means to put in grinder pumps and private lift stations, if you will, for the service of those individual lots to feed to the sewer main up to the northeast is what we're targeting to do there. But still, those details are being ironed out too between WDC's engineer and city engineering office.
So it would likely, crystal ball wise, be sooner rather than later.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chair, how far does the sewer main come down now currently?
To about this location here.
The current developments are all serviced by, or they're holding tanks already?
Yep, the current development of Calvin Industrial does have sanitary sewer, and so, but then that's where they run into elevation issues. So, and then two, there's all sorts of things as far as with that system that we're looking into options of potentially going west instead of extending this system of 212, just for capacity reasons. So I'll get that pulled up here though, so you guys can see that. Oh, and it's not updated. So I'll show you on the concept plan. Okay, well, it's approximately in this location. So it is extended to the extent of Calvin Industrial First Edition. So that's where the private lines will be connecting to at this point.
I have a dumb question. Let's just
There
say,
we go.
because I have no idea what's going there, maybe Todd does, but let's just say it's a big warehouse that holds no people in it, and a lot of those turn out to be that kind of industry where it's, more loading docks and those types of things where there's not a lot of waste happening. Would it be more cost effective just to keep them as septic tanks as opposed to trying to put a lift station there if you only have, 2 or 3 people at each lot using that? Or, I mean, we would never know that until they're developed, but that's the unfortunate thing, but.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, first point I'll make, Commissioner, no such thing as a dumb question, so, happy to discuss these kind of, ideas and talking points as we review these. Yeah, given the multitude of lots, I forget how many lots are we proposing, Brandy, in the 7 lots. The likelihood that each one of those only have 3 or 4 employees is probably pretty small. So what we do in sizing those lift stations is we look at the land use, or anticipated land use, and there's average flow generation that would come from those average land uses. It's kind of like modeling for your street network, your water distribution system for distributing water through any part of town or subdivision. Wastewater is the same way. It's a lot based on projections, based on the land use and the wastewater that would be generated from the land use. To Commissioner Kay's point that he made there offline was also considering the unknowns to the south, but again, sizing a lift station based on what we project to see used to the south based on our comprehensive land use plan and tools that we have in that nature. So long story short is we feel that in order to permanently and long-term and perpetuity serve this area, a lift station is going to be the way to go. WDC is working with their consultant, IDG, on designing that, the capacities that it would need, and right-sizing it too, so that it's not oversized and we build something that's sitting there parked and only half capacity being used for the next 50 years. That's not what we want either. So,
And I misspoke. There's 5 lots in the first phase, 7 in the second phase.
Thank you. This does have a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. If there is anyone that wishes to comment on this item, either in favor or in opposition, please approach the mic and state your name.
Michelle Kakachik, Watertown Development Company, and very excited to have this in front of you guys today. We purchased this land back in 2018 to create additional capacity for industrial development. And as the development to the north took off, we needed to kind of pivot and get that northern area done. Wanted to come back to this, and then 2020 happened, and we had to pivot in a different direction. But one important thing about this is the catalyst for this development is we do have a project, an existing project that is ready for that lot 1, and that would be expansion of a local business due to confidentiality. I can't give details on the business or what they do, but having that as a catalyst for development allowed us to also be able to be approved for money from the Economic Development Administration for some of the infrastructure costs. So we're faced with a great opportunity to get that road in and to get this ready to bring other development here. We would expect the uses of this area to be very similar to Pheasant Ridge Industrial Park, probably those size of businesses. And the thing we do guard against is speculative uses. You won't see that happen here because the idea is to bring in businesses that create jobs and wealth for Watertown.
And then one thing that Michelle didn't state, that this money that's coming from the Economic Development Administration has a time frame on how it can be spent. And so that's why part of we can't dilly-dally too long with this, because the money in the project has to be constructed within a specified time frame. And so while the city and WGC negotiate how that cost-sharing arrangement is going to move forward in the beginning, we are in the design phase right now of moving along with the project. And so it's a good deal, and anytime that the federal government will give you $1+ million to enhance your economic development potential, I think we need to be seriously looking at moving forward with that.
Sir, could you please state your name for the record?
Todd Kays.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you adding that Todd, because we are very grateful for this opportunity, and time is of the essence when it comes to this project because it is a big project. As far as some of the wastewater questions from the WDC standpoint, we've had a lot of discussion with the city on this, a lot of productive discussion on this, and coming up on that decision of, do we do something that services just this park, or do we look to the future of development and do something for a little bit more that actually is more of a future decision rather than just a right now decision. So that's the direction we're moving toward, and it's something we want to move toward quickly because we want to see these have full services, so that in the future, once this is completely developed, we can make this into a certified industrial park.
Thank you. Is there any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I'll ask if there's anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak in favor or against this item. Please feel free to approach the mic. Again, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion in a second.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Brandy, could I get a roll call vote, please?
Colhane.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Aletsky.
Yes.
Dargits Johnson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item 7 on the agenda is open public comment. Brandy, did you receive any?
No.
I'll move on to item 8, which is new business. Any new business?
Yeah, we were just going to announce, and Heath will explain this one.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Council will be having a work session next Monday night, April 10th. I believe it was initially slated to be upstairs in the conference room, but I think it's going to be in here in the regular council chambers. But nonetheless, I'd like to extend an invitation to the planning commissioners. One of the items on the agenda in the work session will be our recently established commercial lake district. And given some of the recent applications to utilize that zoning district here in the last year and a half since we've adopted it, some of the council members would like to give it a look just from a discussional standpoint, I'll say, to consider whether amending it is in order. And so because several of you were heavily involved in that, all of you, I believe, were here at the time we adopted it. Some of you were specifically involved on the committee that helped put it together. We wanted to make sure and extend an invite to each and every one of you to come to that work session meeting on Monday night. I want to preface the concepts behind that, again, are going to be high-level discussion amongst the city council members of whether to even entertain an amendment. It's not going to be getting into the minutia of exactly what we need to change in the ordinance or anything like that. It's going to be more of a conceptual discussion on whether we feel as a community that the CL district needs to be amended already at this point for areas of, or whether there's areas of improvement we could take an approach on and amend certain portions of the CL district language in the zoning ordinance. And so, you know, your thoughts, ideas, comments, I'm sure would be, assuming would be welcome that evening as part of that. If for no other reason, I encourage you to be there for observation and to hear the discussion. If the council would decide to entertain moving forward with drafting some kind of an amendment, that's how our zoning ordinance book is set up, that it can be amended in a few different ways. One of them is, you know, ideas are brought forth by staff and then to the planning commission and subsequently to council for approval. Planning commission themselves can initiate some ideas for staff to execute and bring forward for that same cycle to go back to the full board and then up to the council level for approval. And another mechanism is for the city council members to initiate a change that goes to the planning commission for consideration and then back to them for final approval. And so that's really the exercised option we would be looking at here. Again, that's if the council as a whole decides, yeah, we could maybe polish a couple things in here, let's open it up. But again, would love your participation in that meeting Monday night if you're available. If you're not, we will definitely follow up with you on what the discussion is and go from there. If the council agrees to move forward with an amendment draft, I would anticipate select few of you being on that committee. So please keep that in mind as well as we step that discussion forward.
What time, Heath?
Good question. Yeah, I believe 5 o'clock. We'll confirm and send you, the board, an email confirming that.
And is this invite just to the board or is it to the public as well?
It's a public meeting, as every council work session is. So if, you know, whoever wants to attend may.
Thank you.
And two, just for context now, and I'm doing some research on when we were, our subcommittee with Plan Commission, because Diana, Todd,
And Blake.
and who was, and Liam. Okay, I was between you and Bonnie, so.
I don't know if I was part of it or not. I went to all those meetings.
I think,
Yeah, because we started with, as resorts.
yeah.
I remember.
And then we went down to 4, and I think you were one of them, Liam, but I'll be able to confirm that. But I wasn't sure, just not looking, okay.
To Brandy's point, one of the items of discussion Monday night will be staff giving a history or a timeline of how the ordinance was established, the work that the committee put into it, and then the subsequent actions, of course, by the Planning Commission and Council, and the time frame that all happened in. So,
Thank you. Is there any other new business?
None that I have.
Item 9, old business. Do we have any old business?
Again, none that I have.
Item 10, any reason to go into executive session?
Nope.
We are adjourned.
Thank you, guys.
Happy Easter, everybody.